Fulgrim's story is undeniably one of great tragedy, even within the context of his Primarch brothers who succumbed to the seductive call of chaos. When we consider figures like Angron, whose destiny was cruelly sealed by the butcher's nails implanted in his brain, or Magnus, who made a series of ill-fated choices that ultimately led to the downfall of his world, his legion, and himself, it's clear that each Primarch bears their unique tragic burdens. Even Mortarion, who harbored deep resentment for his father and eventually succumbed to Nurgle's influence, underwent a transformation that he loathed. Now, you might argue that all these Primarchs have their own tragic narratives, and you'd be correct to an extent. It's important to note that Lorgar was the sole Primarch who willingly embraced chaos, while Horus was cunningly manipulated and coerced into becoming the chosen of chaos, undivided. Yet, what sets Fulgrim apart and makes his tale particularly heart-wrenching is how agonizingly close he came to remaining loyal to the Imperium. It all hinged on a seemingly mundane decision, the moment he picked up the blade of the lyre at the Temple of Slaanesh. In that fleeting instant, Fulgrim sealed his fate, forever altering the course of his existence. Fulgrim's tragic descent into darkness is underscored by the fine line he walked between salvation and damnation, his fate forever marred by a seemingly insignificant choice. However, his tragedy runs even deeper. While he, like all Primarchs, had his imperfections, Fulgrim was originally a noble and complex character. He held a deep appreciation for art, culture, and the diverse talents of the remembrances who accompanied him and the Emperor's children. This capacity to respect and empathize with ordinary humans was a rare quality among the Primarchs, as many of them remained profoundly detached from the very people they were meant to protect and preserve. Following his descent, Fulgrim tragically succumbed to absolute hedonism. The once great and noble leader who had aspired to elevate himself, his legion, and all of humanity, driven by the pursuit of perfection, had become an incoherent, vainglorious, and decadent shadow of his former self. All the lofty ideals he once held were squandered, and his vast potential lay wasted. Even the legion he had once loved and cared deeply for, his own sons, had been reduced to mere playthings, catering to his every urge and whim. In his self-obsession, Fulgrim had stripped away everything he had once treasured and deemed valuable. To comprehend the profound transformation brought about by Fulgrim's fall to Slaanesh, it's essential to begin by delineating his virtues and flaws. Fulgrim's history, both intriguing and pivotal, serves as a backdrop to his ultimate descent from grace. Fulgrim, like his fellow Primarchs, was transported from Terra as an infant through a warp rift by the Chaos Gods to thwart the rise of the Imperium. His journey led him to the resource-poor mining world of Chemos. Chemos was a harsh world, perpetually shrouded in twilight, isolated during the Age of Strife by warp storms. Its dwindling resources and food shortages compelled the Chemosians to toil relentlessly. A stroke of fate occurred when scouts from the fortress factory of Kallax discovered Fulgrim's gestation capsule and saved him from certain death. They pleaded for his life, as orphans typically met death to ease resource strains. Raised by a member of the caretakers, Fulgrim, named after a Chemosian deity, became a legend on the struggling world. Despite his youth, Fulgrim's profound understanding of Chemosian mining technology allowed him to enhance its efficiency. By the age of 15, he had ascended to a position of leadership among the executives in Kallax, uncovering the grim reality of Chemos' declining technology and population due to resource shortages. He initiated expeditions to reclaim and restore ancient mining outposts, greatly boosting production. Surpluses eventually allowed Chemos to purchase essential supplies from interstellar traders. Fulgrim, now the planet's de facto leader, rekindled Chemosian culture and art. long neglected due to the need for constant labor. During this period, Fulgrim faced numerous adversaries, most notably clashing with the formidable sword dancers of Sulphur. Additionally, he entered into a series of strategic political marriages aimed at solidifying the allegiance of various factory cities. However, he would outlive each of his spouses. Fulgrim admitted that he initially harbored genuine affection for some of these partners, but over time, his emotions waned, and he found himself growing indifferent. Soon after their triumph, Chemos's isolation ended. From the ever-twilit sky descended heavily armored and battle-scarred Stormbird dropships bearing the Imperial Aquila, symbolizing the Emperor of Mankind. Recognizing the Aquila, Fulgrim's memories stirred. Chemos lacked a formal military force, but the caretakers, the planetary police of the fortress factories, encircled the landing zone. Fulgrim ordered them to welcome the newcomers to Kallax. In his private quarters, Fulgrim met the armored warriors from the stars, representing the civilization he longed to reintroduce to his homeworld. Among them stood the radiant figure of the Emperor. Without a word, Fulgrim knelt, offering his sword in service, pledging his unwavering dedication to the Emperor and the Imperium of Man. The Emperor educated his son about Terra and the Great Crusade, aimed at uniting scattered worlds under a single rule, securing humanity's dominance in the galaxy. Upon returning to Terra, Fulgrim met the 3rd Legion of Space Marines, created from his genetic lineage. He discovered that an accident had destroyed most of the gene seed, making its replacement slow and laborious. Fulgrim addressed the modest 200 Astartes of the 3rd Legion. His speech was so inspiring that the Emperor named them the Emperor's Children and granted them the honor of displaying the Imperial Aquila on their power armor. Fulgrim and his legion were driven to embody the perfection seen in the Emperor's vision for Imperial culture. This pursuit extended to all aspects of their lives, from military strategy to an unparalleled focus on aesthetics and personal appearance. Fulgrim epitomized this quest for physical beauty and excellence, with his silver hair, welcoming eyes, and wry smile. His power armor was intricately adorned in the colors of his legion, often draped with finely embroidered high-collared cloaks. These events may also be seen as the initial steps of his descent into darkness. The immense burden of meeting the Emperor's high standards and the inherent genetic flaw in his gene sons, which significantly reduced their numbers, may have driven Fulgrim deeper into his quest for self-perfection. It is undeniable that the imperfection of his legion weighed heavily on him, as evident in their proclivity for biological experiments and the presence of individuals like Fabius Bile. The bond between Primarchs Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, known as the Phoenician and the Gorgon, was renowned throughout the Imperium during the Great Crusade. Their connection formed instantly when they first met beneath Mount Narodnia, a colossal forge in the Urals on Terra. Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, was demonstrating his remarkable skill and the extraordinary abilities of his liquid metal hands to forge masters who had served the Terrawat clan during the Unification Wars. Their work stopped as Fulgrim, the Primarch of the 3rd Legion, the Emperor's Children, and his elite Phoenix Guard arrived. Despite never having met before, the shared essence of alchemy and science that had shaped them resonated. The artisans present saw both Primarchs as godlike figures, fearing a cataclysmic clash between them. As the story goes, Fulgrim declared his intention to craft the most perfect weapon ever, one destined for the Great Crusade. Ferrus Manus, not one to back down from a challenge, laughed at the notion, proclaiming that Fulgrim's soft hands could never match his own living metal appendages. They stripped to their waists and began a contest that spanned 3 months, forging their legendary weapons. Fulgrim created the magnificent Warhammer Forgebreaker, capable of leveling mountains with a single strike, while Ferrus Manus forged the golden-bladed sword, Fireblade, eternally aflame with the forge's fire. When each beheld the other's creation, they declared their opponent's weapons superior. Without words, they exchanged weapons, sealing their eternal friendship through their craftsmanship. Ferrus Manus, often known as the Gorgon, earned this nickname from Fulgrim himself. Unlike the Phoenician, Ferrus Manus had little time for art or cultural pastimes, focusing on the galaxy's reclamation. While they returned to the Imperial Palace following their meeting at Mount Narodnia, Primarch Sanguinius of the Blood Angels Legion presented exquisite gifts to the Emperor, marvels of beauty. Fulgrim reveled in the art, finding a brother who shared his appreciation for such splendor. Ferrus Manus, however, saw them as trivial distractions from the task of reclaiming the galaxy. Fulgrim playfully called him a terrible Gorgon for his lack of appreciation for beauty, and the nickname stuck, with Ferrus Manus becoming known as the Gorgon from that point on. From the outset, Fulgrim's fervor to leave a lasting mark on the Great Crusade paralleled the ambitions of his fellow Primarchs. However, the modest size of the Emperor's Children Legion led to its initial placement under the command of Horus, resulting in a profound bond between the two leaders. Over the course of several Terran decades, the Emperor's Children's ranks swelled with fresh recruits, hailing from both Terra and Fulgrim's homeworld of Chemos. The Fortress Monastery at the old Fortress Factory of Kallax became their base of operations. When his legion reached sufficient numbers, Fulgrim was entrusted with the command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet, launching his own campaign of conquest. Among the myriad worlds they encountered, Lyran stood out, an advanced Xenos planet tainted by the allure of the chaos god Slaanesh. Though the world held invaluable resources, the Lyre, the native serpentine inhabitants, vehemently rejected imperial domination. In response, the Emperor's children unleashed their might to bring Lyran into compliance. Unbeknownst to them, the Lyre had succumbed to the insidious influence of Slaanesh, worshipping the deity of pleasure and pain. The oceanic realm of Lyran concealed an unimaginable secret, a colossal temple dedicated to the Prince of Pleasure. Hidden within the heart of this temple was a malevolent chaos artifact, a demon blade. This sword served as the physical vessel for a keeper of secrets, a greater demon of Slaanesh. Upon claiming the demon blade, Fulgrim's psyche became a battleground for the sinister whispers of the demon contained within. Initially, he believed these whispers to be mere manifestations of his subconscious desires. Yet, under the influence of his corrupted brother Horus, who had already fallen to the ruinous powers after his ordeal on the moon of Davin, Fulgrim succumbed to the allure of chaos. He willingly embraced the Prince of Pleasure, embarking on a path toward ultimate self-obsession where morality held no sway in his relentless pursuit of perfection for himself and his Astartes. Gradually, the demon sword began to strongly influence Fulgrim, potentially tainting the forces deployed against the Lyre with Slaanesh's allure. In this spiritually perilous state, Fulgrim played a central role in the emerging Horus heresy. Fulgrim's meeting with Farseer Eldred Ulthran of Ulthwé on the maiden world Tarsus ended in outrage as the Farseer accused Horus of turning to chaos. This reaction was fueled by the influence of the Lyran blade and the Keeper of Secrets housed within it. The clash resulted in the destruction of Eldrad's forces and Eldrad's withdrawal, further leading to Fulgrim's use of virus bombs to obliterate Eldar Maiden worlds. Fulgrim eventually met Horus in person, and despite his respect for the War Master, Fulgrim was swayed to his cause. This shift in loyalty marked the beginning of the Chaos Infection, spreading through Fulgrim and his legion. Perfection became hedonism, and Fulgrim's mental state deteriorated. The Istvan system saw the Emperor's children aiding in the massacre of their loyalist brethren, with Fulgrim confronting his beloved brother Ferrus Manus in a fateful duel, ending in Ferrus's death. In a moment of weakness, Fulgrim agreed to a demon's offer and allowed it to possess him. He became a prisoner in his own form, controlled by this demon who originally existed within the Lair Blade. This moment marked his ultimate breaking point. All his preceding actions, the descent into degeneracy and depravity, the gradual erosion of his sanity, and the ensuing madness shrouding his vision in sheer vanity, none of it had been sufficient to break Fulgrim entirely. However, witnessing his beloved brother's lifeless form, the one he cherished the most, along with the disintegration of his own legion, shattered his spirit. The weight of responsibility for all this realization bore down on him, causing intense regret and grief. It was so overwhelming that for a brief moment he managed to wrest control from the demon. Yet in the face of this excruciating reality, Fulgrim ultimately succumbed. He allowed the demon to seize complete control over his body from that point onward. This, I believe, is the true tragedy. He had a choice in that moment, despite the tremendous cost. He could have chosen to discard the accursed blade, to attempt to save his legion, his sons, from the corruption he had inundated them with. But he simply relinquished control, unwilling to bear the painful truth and take responsibility for what had transpired. By that point, he had already lost everything. It reveals the depths of his cowardice and the genuine tragedy of his story. Fulgrim, like many of his traitor brothers, was broken and manipulated in the end. Leaving the finer points aside, I personally find his descent into darkness one of the more captivating narratives. It's far from flawless, particularly in some unmentioned details, but there's a compelling tragedy and a valuable lesson embedded within his tale. Regrettably, a character as intricate and layered as Fulgrim has now become a mere shadow of his former self. Among all the treacherous Primarchs, Fulgrim stands out as someone whose original character and essence were completely obliterated by his plunge into the clutches of Slaanesh. Such is the inexorable fate that awaits those who succumb to the allure of chaos, where nuance and complexity hold no place, sadly. This was probably the most fun I had making a video. You could say Fulgrim is one of my favorite Primarchs before his fall, and one of my least favorites after it. Partially because I personally like nuanced characters very much, but also because of the ideals he used to embody. Regretfully, all of that is merely a backdrop for the greatest fall from grace I have ever seen in fiction. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, I would like to ask you to like and subscribe. I have some ideas for the next videos which I believe will be pretty decent. Erebus is one character I always wish to discuss. As always, I thank you for watching this until the end, and hopefully I will meet you on the next video.